Welcome to the MADLOVE Your Life Show. I'm Mary D., the Joy Catalyst, here to be your host and transformation guide. Mad Love is about the mad, making a difference, and love is what we serve up to live a delicious life. My intention is to help you spark new ideas, break limiting beliefs, and align with your deepest dreams and desires. Get ready for laughter, inspiration, and finding your inner roar in every show. Hey, beautiful souls. Welcome back to the MADLOVE Your Life Show. If you're standing in a season of change, maybe it's a business block or a relationship shift or a rediscovery of who you're becoming, take a deep breath because you are not behind. You are in the right place at the right time, and you don't have to do it alone. Around here, we blend soul with strategy because real clarity isn't just about having a plan. It's about feeling grounded and confident and excited for what's next. I help purpose-driven humans like you simplify whatever is feeling heavy, getting you back on track, and expanding what's possible for the future with integrity, intention, and with joy. So if your heart's whispering or maybe even screaming that it's time for more ease, more clarity, and more impact, head over to maryd.com to book a private session. Let's build on what's working, adjust what's not, and shape a life that feels aligned, spacious, and magical, designed just for you. Also, before we begin, a quick love note. Everything shared on the MADLOVE Your Life Show is meant to inspire, not prescribe. I'm not your doctor or therapist, but rather your soul sister. And guests on the show are sharing their wisdom, lived experiences, and professional perspectives. And those should not be construed as legal, medical, or financial advice. So take what resonates and leave what doesn't. If you've tried every planner, productivity hack, or system and still felt like something was wrong with you, then this episode is for you. Today's guest is Kristen Carder, and she is someone who truly gets the ADHD brain. Kristen is a multi-certified coach, ADHD educator, and the host of the wildly popular I Have ADHD Podcast, which has been downloaded over 9 million times around the world. What I love about Kristen's work is that she doesn't try to fix people because she doesn't believe they're broken. She teaches that ADHD isn't about laziness or lack of motivation. It's about self-regulation, emotional safety, and learning how to build trust with yourself again. Her voice is compassionate, honest, and grounding, especially for adults who appear high-functioning on outside, but feel overwhelmed, paralyzed, or exhausted on the inside. She has helped thousands of people stop shaming themselves and start building lives that actually work for their brains. And I'm so honored to have her here today. Kristen, welcome to the show. And I want to kick us off with my favorite question, which is, what do you know now about ADHD that you wished you had known before you got into this work?
Oh, that's a good one. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here. I love having conversations like this. There's so much that I wish that I knew back when I was diagnosed, because prior to being diagnosed, I just thought I was a bad person. I just thought that I must not care. I just must have kind of missed the memo. And maybe I'm a narcissist. Like maybe I am really selfish and only thinking about myself because, I forget my best friend's birthdays and I miss really important appointments. And maybe I really am. Maybe everything that I believe about myself is true. And I'm just broken and there's just something wrong with me. And that I'm like secretly really selfish and horrible. And coming to an understanding about ADHD has really healed so much of that for me, because what I understand now is that so much of what I hated about myself at the time was directly linked to ADHD symptoms. And so having a deeper understanding of ADHD, not just a diagnosis, because the diagnosis was great and helpful, but my clinician didn't tell me anything about ADHD. And this was in the very early 2000s. So it wasn't really being talked about, but just doing the research and reading a million books on the topic, and then having the privilege of interviewing so many experts like I have, and then subsequently, becoming certified as a coach, et cetera, has just led me to realize so much of what I've always hated about myself is directly linked to ADHD, and I can kind of assign blame in the right location And it doesn't mean that I get a free pass, but it does mean that like, oh, there's something going on with my brain, and there are clear steps for supporting it so that I can show up as more of myself,
Oh, I
as
love
the
that.
person that I want to be.
Yeah, no, that's really good. So I'm curious because I know someone right now is listening and they're like, when you said the words, I forgot my best friend's birthday, like they're right away were like, oh my gosh, I think I'm a bad friend. I think these things. So what are some of the steps to maybe do just some initial self-identifying? Like what were some
Mm.
other things that you were showing up for you? Like you gave us a couple examples, but like give us some more because I know there are people that are just like their brain is going, wait, is that me? And
Yeah.
I know that if you give them more clues, they're going to be like, "Oh my god, I think that is me." So what are those clues?
Sure. So I think that especially for women, it's kind of this internal hum of being like a hot mess express. Like I'm kind of functioning on the outside most of the time, but I feel like a hot mess. I don't know if like your audience is old enough to have watched Friends, because like that is
It's a classic.
greatest
It's a
show of all.
classic. I like to think everyone has watched Friends.
Okay. You know how Monica has her closet of shame? That is what I felt my life was like just really trying to work twice as hard as everybody else just to keep up, but always having this closet of shame. So maybe it truly was a closet. Maybe it was my car. Maybe it was like the back end of my business or like my email inbox. There's always just this like piece of shame that's like everybody else has it together, but I don't. So I'm constantly interrupting people. I'm constantly late or forgetting important events, or I can't find my freaking keys. Like where are they this time? Like, why aren't they ever where I need them to be? Like things that it just feels like the world has got it figured out, but I am still like, why am I 30 years old and still struggling with these types of things? I always felt kind of like a little kid, which is really interesting because I was a functioning adult. Functioning, maybe we need to use that term pretty loosely, but I was an adult, but I knew that my potential and my performance, there was a big gap between potential and performance. And that's actually one of the things that clinicians look for, especially with kids when they're doing like a cognitive evaluation, like whether or not there is that gap between potential and performance. And I think that a lot of us just feel that internally. Like what is going on here? Why? I know I'm smart. I know I've got it, whatever it is. And yet I'm not able to perform ever to the level that I feel like I should.
Got it. Got it. And so for people who are not in the or don't have ADHD, then is one of the identifiers for us to be more compassionate towards our friends who are late all the time, who we would actually refer to as a little bit of a hot mess, because I think that's a thing. And I think that person in the group always knows who they are, and so do their friends. And so it can become a joke, but then maybe it's not a joke, and maybe it's just like they don't know what they don't know, and either do their friends, right? We just go, oh, this friend is just, they're just sort of a hot mess, and we're sort of accepting it. So I think in that scenario, trying to be the compassionate friend, like how do we even broach this? Like, what's the next step we can take? Because obviously we don't want to make our friends feel outcast, and we don't want to continue to like feed the shame bucket or the shame closet. So what's a good intervention there? Or what's the literally what's the next step we can do there?
That's such a beautiful question, because I think that people with ADHD really do get these labels as like, oh, she's just flaky, right? Like, oh, well, there's Kristen again. Like, of course she's late. And on one hand, I think it is important to hold space for the impact that does have like on a friend group. It's not that somebody with ADHD should just always be excused. And it's like, oh, it's fine. Like you can treat me however you want, and I'm never going to hold you accountable. But I think that you said something really important, which is like having compassion for the struggle. And maybe a next step would be just asking, like, is this something that you're actually struggling with? Hey, are you late because you don't care, or are you late because you're struggling? I'm just curious. Like, I'm just trying to understand. I don't know that it's like kind of PC to like even suggest ADHD, but even like, hey, I heard this podcast, I thought of you, that like that kind of a thing might be helpful, like sharing resources with people. But even as, you know, a professional, I don't go to my friends and say like, have you considered ADHD? Because I just feel like that's really not my place.
Yeah.
But I do think that there is enough out there now on like TikTok and Instagram and just enough information now compared to 20 years ago. That if someone were to say like, man, I really feel like I have ADHD, just validating that. My goodness, tell me more. Why do you think that? What does that look like? Yeah, I really see that in you. You might want to talk to somebody about that. Rather than what most of us get, which is like, whatever, everybody says they have ADHD. You know, kind of like the eye roll.
The dismiss. Yeah.
Dismissing it for sure. There's so much of that right now, which is, that's just so sad to me.
Yeah, no, for sure. For sure. And I think it's interesting because the natural sort of cliche inclination towards children anyway is if they're hyper, then like, of course they have ADHD. Like that's, I think the default sort of like everyone wants to self-diagnose, right? Or diagnose someone else. But kids are energetic. I mean, they're lively. They're in like the best time of their life, right? So who knows? But then we get older, and then I think, like you said, you start to see it show up a little differently in adults, which can be again that friend that we would pin as kind of the hot mess friend, and the friend who knows that they're the hot mess. And is that a great, you know, clue that, oh, maybe this is an opportunity to go and get checked out around ADHD, to start asking professionals about ADHD, to start looking at resources around ADHD. Because now that you say that, it makes so much more sense when I also think through the people in my life who might carry that label of a hot mess. And I go, oh, okay, this does help explain a lot. And again, without dismissing the impact that it can have on everyone else and the work, and knowing that they feel it too. So what's the right next step? And it's, I think, kindness and compassion, and finding a way to, you know, share a podcast like this one.
Yeah, like sending reels like, haha, thought of you, or like, what do you think about this? You know, I think those kinds of things can feel validating. Hopefully they don't feel, you know, too aggressive. And it's just, it really is whether or not you're able to approach it with that compassion and understanding. Like, hey, I see you.
Yeah.
I see you in this. Everybody wants to be seen, and nobody with ADHD wants to be seen as a hot mess, right? Like, we just don't. We don't. And when ADHD goes untreated, that's when it's just like so complicated, and literally it might sound too like permissive to say they don't have control, but they have so little control over their impulsivity, their distractibility, their time management, their emotional regulation. I mean, untreated ADHD is no joke. So really being able to see the person behind it, I think, is very important.
Absolutely. And when someone gets an adult ADHD diagnosis, what's the emotional process that you've often seen people go through? Like, you know, is it relief? Is it grief? Is it anger? Is it something else? I'm curious to know what that actually looks like. And you've obviously have a lived experience of this. So I'd be curious to know, like, what did you actually go through when you know, what were the emotions that landed for you?
Well, I was pretty young when I was diagnosed. So I was diagnosed, I can't remember if it was 20 or 21 years old, which is quite young for a female. So the median age of diagnosis for females right now is 38, which is pretty late, which means a lot of people are diagnosed after 38. So, you know, for me, I was basically still a kid, but for the people that I support in my program, I would say the emotional experience is all of the above, everything that you named. Grief, a lot of grief. And the grief is a lot about what could have been if they had known sooner. Maybe I wouldn't have gotten that divorce. Maybe I would have a better relationship with my kids. Maybe I would have been able to hold down a job and I wouldn't be in debt, right? So there's a lot of like what ifs and regret. There is also that anger. How could my parents miss this? How
Mm.
could the school system have missed this? How could I have missed this? Even like turning that inward. How could I have missed? So there's some anger, I think also. And then just the relief of being validated. That
Mm.
takes a little bit of time, because you do have to deepen your understanding about what it truly means to have ADHD. But as you learn and really understand the symptoms of ADHD and the parts of your life that were impacted by ADHD, I always like to say ADHD, um, there's no area of your life that it doesn't touch. It
Mm.
impacts you from the boardroom to the bedroom. Like there's
Mhm.
literally no space in your life if you have ADHD that ADHD doesn't touch. And so really understanding like the full impact of it can really provide a lot of validation and relief.
Mm. Well, I'm listening to you to describe it, and what comes up for me is thinking about self-trust. That there is an erosion of self-trust that's happening probably over time without people even realizing it, right? So the self-doubt. And then also, if you did get diagnosed, then it's the regret of like, wow, I wish I'd known this sooner. Cause you're right. Like there's probably relationships that have been affected by it.
Mhm.
So what does rebuilding self-trust look like once you know? Like what's the real life version of that, which is not the just believe in yourself, phraseology, but like how do you practically do that?
Hmm. I mean, that is a long process.
Mm.
So here's what I will say. When someone is initially diagnosed with ADHD, I like to call it like the triage phase. So let's say somebody comes into my program focused and they're kind of newly diagnosed and they're like, I'm here to learn about ADHD. We're in triage mode. We're just kind of plugging up all of the holes of what feels like a sinking ship. And so it's like, you can't really work on self-trust if you're not even getting out of bed when your alarm is going off and you're oversleeping and late to work. Right. And
Mm.
so there's kind of like these levels of attack that we take where it's just like, first we need to make your day-to-day life less chaotic. So like we need to
Mm.
start there. Does that make sense? And so we
Yeah.
need to make sure that you're like functioning and you're not overly, the impact of ADHD is just like less and less and less in your life. Once we've kind of gone through that triage phase and someone has built, first of all, like a treatment plan for themselves, and they feel like they have kind of everything in place there, and then they've kind of figured out systems in their life, blah, blah, blah. So like those kind of things happen. And then we are able to touch on the issues of self-trust. And the way that I do that primarily is walking them through, here's why you don't have it in the first place. Like before we can build it, we have to figure out why you don't even have it. And for most of us, that goes all the way back to childhood, because self-trust is a developmental process that happens in safe enough families, in safe enough environments where parents are literally helping the child build the foundation, the building blocks of self-trust. But when you have an ADHD child in a potentially dysfunctional family, which many of us come from,
Mm.
because ADHD travels in families. It's just a whole thing. So children grow up hearing the messages like, why can't you just do this? What is wrong with you? Why can't you be more like your sister? Why are you going so
Mm.
slow? Like, you're just being lazy. This shouldn't be so hard for you. So all of those messages that kiddos get in ADHD families is actually like where we need to start and kind of
Mhm.
healing and repairing that. And then I love to help people build an evidence bank of, even though their life may have been a hot mess express, where are the points in your life where you really did show up for yourself? Because you're
Mm.
here now. Like if you have ADHD, you're listening to this podcast, you're just like, oh my gosh, like I need it. I need that self-trust. Like begin to build an evidence bank for yourself of the points in your life where you truly have taken care of yourself, where you've shown up for yourself. Because it's so easy to just be like, I suck. I'm the worst, and just these things that we just like let ourselves think, rather than pointing to, oh, okay, I was fired from this job and that did suck, but here's how I took care of myself when that happened. Or my marriage fell apart and that was terrible, but here's how I took care of myself when that happened, like leading us up to this point. Does that make sense? And then building a context for, I've got my own back and I'm always going to take care of myself moving forward. I trust. And so do you see how that's the third step? Like that doesn't, so often we want to start with that. We're like, what are the sweet, like little phrases that we can tell ourselves, like the mantras, but that comes last.
Got it.
Those self-trust mantras come last. So often we try to start with them and then we're like, this does not work. Like, I guess I'll never build self-trust. But really it's like first repairing that relationship that you had with yourself as a kiddo, and then seeing your life through like a different lens of how you got yourself to this point. And here you are now, like, this is amazing. And building this like relationship with yourself. I've got my own back. I believe myself. So when I say I'm tired, I believe myself and I take care of myself. When I say I can't do this, I believe myself and I say, okay, what do you need? What do you need here? So just building that relationship with yourself so that we can move forward.
So good. That's so good. This makes me think through just the relationship impact that shows up also when a partner or both partners are showing up with ADHD and may not even completely realize it. And I think some of the labels that show up are like, oh, that's someone being overly emotional. I think that's definitely a label. And what are some of the other, like, what ways does ADHD show up in relationships that get misunderstood by partners? Because I think is a really juicy one that we should talk about.
I think that there is a really interesting parent-child dynamic that can show up when one of the partners is over-functioning and then another partner is under-functioning. And it can be male or female. It doesn't matter who has ADHD in this scenario, but oftentimes what will happen is one partner will overfunction and kind of like take on a parental role, and the other partner will just kind of be enabled to underfunction and take on this child role. And that is not sexy. Right. Nobody wants that, right? And so that gets really, really difficult because there is a responsibility of the ADHD partner to take ownership of their ADHD, to treat their ADHD, to take it seriously. But that does become very hard when perhaps the other partner is not looking at it through the lens of ADHD, but they're looking at it through the lens of, you just don't care.
Right.
You're just not trying hard enough. You're just lazy. And so again, ADHD can really give us a different lens to look through to say, okay, it's possible that you do care and you don't have the support that you need to proceed as a functioning adult. So what support is available? Do we need medication? Do we need therapy? Do we need coaching? Do we need, like, what do we need here, right? In order to make it so that you can function as a participant in this relationship and that you're not just like being parented by the other partner.
Yeah. So for a parent or for a partner that's in a relationship with someone who has ADHD, what is something that you would say is helpful versus creating more pressure? Like, is there, like, how does that show up? Because I imagine that's another one that's come across your plate more than once as well. Like, what words or actions have been helpful and which words and actions have been like, no, not helpful?
That's so interesting. I'm trying to think through how to answer this question. So I think that shame is never helpful. And so any phrase or wording or conversation that induces shame is going to make the ADHD person retreat and avoid 100%. And so it might sound different to different people, right? But you know your partner well, and you know exactly what to say to make them feel shame. And just understanding that that does not work. It doesn't work. That being said, again, I don't want it to sound like there shouldn't be any accountability. So for me personally, this is just my own personal boundary. Okay. So this is not prescriptive for anyone else, but my own personal boundary would be, I would not be in a romantic relationship with someone who had ADHD, but chose to do nothing about their ADHD. That would be an absolute no for me, because I know how serious ADHD is and how it impacts every aspect of life, and how like the deep impact on relationships. And that would be an absolutely not from my perspective. So perhaps the conversation is less about what needs to get done around the house and more, or like whatever the case may be, and more about like, hey, remember you got that ADHD diagnosis when you were 15, but we've never really talked about it and you've never really done anything about it. I think maybe we need to have a conversation about that. Would you be open to it? Right. So like those kinds of conversations that help the ADHD partner take it more seriously.
So really it's letting them take ownership of what's showing up for them. And I guess that's really true with anything that we're having a disagreement about, or a relationship dysfunction around, right? Is how can we all take massive personal ownership over whatever baggage or crap we're bringing to the table, and then also for the other person, whatever their baggage and crap is that they're bringing to the table, and then finding that way to move forward. I mean, that's really what I'm hearing here, and I love that, because you're right. When I'm listening to you, what comes up for me is like, oh wow, like I'm viewing my friend that's the hot mess as like so much more compassionately. And like, this makes so much sense. It makes so much sense. And so hearing you say that, I'm just like, oh, wow. Like how many of us are under the wrong impression, and we're just sort of but also sort of dismissing it and being like, oh, that's just how they're going to be, when there's actually some other steps we can take. And I think that that's where the miscommunication happens so often, is in trying to bridge the gap between like, why can't you just get your stuff together? Yep. That's just that's not helpful, right? That's not a helpful conversation with them, because they're going, I wish I knew how. And so it's beyond something beyond that. So I love that. It's such a good conversation. And I'm really curious, like, how do you help your clients separate who they are from the coping strategies that they had to develop just to survive? Because I'm also hearing that this goes back in time, right? So this is something that they've actually learned to do. They've learned to cope. So how do you help them unlearn?
This is also one of those, like, that's a long process. I like to say that, like, this is the work of our lives, right? And I think that doesn't just apply to people with ADHD. This is a broader conversation about humanity and what it means to be human. And how do I separate the parts of me that I'm not proud of from the parts of me that, like, I feel like are my true, authentic self? And sometimes it is like as simple as, like, on the left side of the page, I write out all of the ways that my ADHD symptoms kind of present themselves. Like for me personally, what does that actually look like for me? And I just list it all out. And on the right side of the page, I list who I am. Who actually am I? I am funny. I haven't been that funny on this podcast, but I'm funny. I'm kind. I'm warm. I'm nurturing. I really see people. So I list out the qualities of, like, the person of Kristen Carder, and I list out, like, the ways that my ADHD presents itself. And I literally just create, like, separation there visually for myself. So, like, the fact that I am time blind and struggle with time management, that is part of who I am, right? But it is not like my personality. It is not my character. It is an outworking of my ADHD, right? And so I'm kind of separating, here's how ADHD plays out in my life, and here are the qualities of who I am as a person. I call it building a self-concept, which is just the way we think about ourselves. And along with that is an entire conversation about our inner critic and the ways that we've been talking to ourselves for our entire lives. And again, this conversation also goes back to childhood, because our inner critic is built in childhood. Our inner monologue, our inner voice, that's built by our family. That's built by our caregivers. And again, kind of giving credit where credit's due, and naming what is true and naming reality, even when it is painful. And then kind of working out like, okay, what voice internally is my inner critic? And it might sound a lot like my mom, or it might sound a lot like my grandpa, or whoever that might be. And what voice inside of me is my actual intuition, is my actual inner monologue. And there's a separation there as well.
So good. So good. Yeah. I love this idea of going back into like a reset mode of like, here are the projections I've been putting on myself, versus like, okay, but let's set all that aside. And if we cleaned this slate up and we just really looked inside and said, what is that my actual like list of things that I know that I love about myself and that others love about me, and how I show up in the world, like who I truly am, aside from when I'm late, aside from like all those things. And I think that's such a great distinction, because it's really difficult to sometimes separate the negative piece from, you start to go down and go, oh, does the good outweigh the bad? Like it starts to become some of that comparison. And I think comparison is where it gets really rough, because we're never usually comparing apples to apples. We're busy, comparing ourselves to like this super high functioning person who doesn't have ADHD, and they do operate like clockwork, and, I'm sure come with their own set of issues also, but here we are, right? That's the comparison game. So I think that's really beautiful, is to just rebuilding our self-image, and then allowing us to actually believe those things, and to unlearn the negativity and some of the other things that were that didn't serve us, as we grew up. And I think that's true for everyone, whether you have ADHD or not. Yeah.
I just want to add one more thing here, which is part of this work is allowing what we see as bad and what we see as good to coexist.
Yeah.
Right? It's not, nobody is all good or all bad. But our inner monologues, especially as somebody with ADHD, it really does, that inner critic is like, you're the worst, you're the worst, you're the worst, right? So when we bring out the good, it's not about only seeing the good. It's about allowing the difficult and the easy to coexist, and to have compassion for both, and to say like, I get to be a full human. I don't just have to be a perfect human with all these great qualities. I'm also not just a terrible human with all these ADHD symptoms. I'm all of it. And I get to be worthy and loved and accepted with all of this. So
Yes.
I can be both. I can allow this to, like, two things can be true here. And I think that's hard.
Yes.
I actually think that is very, very hard for all humans.
Yes. No, I would totally agree with that. And what that's bringing up for me is thinking through, I had a partner who was super OCD about cleaning, but that was amazing, because Kristen, this place was spotless all the time, like all the time. Everything had a place. Keys were never lost. Like you never had to worry about that stuff. And the other extreme of that is getting, he was someone who was very caught up in a little bit of perfectionism around things. And if someone didn't install a floor right, he was ready to rip it up and make them start over again. So it's interesting to see. It's like you said, both can be true. It can be amazing and awesome, and it can be a little annoying and like rigid. And but you got to take it that they both go together. And can we not judge it? Can it just be what it is, versus the story of good and bad? And that's a whole nother episode on good and bad, but we'll start there with where most people have an understanding. I'm curious, what does a regulated, self-trusting ADHD life actually look like? Like, what is possible on the other side of shame after you've gone through this process of kind of reparenting yourself and re-seeing yourself, and able to understand, how your own brain works in some ways. And, maybe medication's involved, maybe it's not. Like, what does that look like? What's that life look like? Because I feel like you're, a living, breathing, person who's gone through this process. And so share with me now, how has life looked differently for you now that you've been able to sit with the healing?
I will say that my life feels different from the inside out. So I get to walk through my day fairly grounded, with purpose, with a kind inner monologue, like a buddy in my brain, it just sounds so like I'm rolling my eyes at myself. Okay, everyone, I'm sorry. But truly, like the noise in my brain is not mean. It's not shaming. I am able to become dysregulated, as everyone does, but I have tools in my tool belt to re-regulate. And so, I have 3 teenagers, so your girl gets dysregulated. Okay. I also have like a demanding job and whatever, like just like everybody else listening to this podcast, like you all have your lives. And yes, I become dysregulated, but it no longer hijacks my life. Because what used to happen is I would become dysregulated and then I wouldn't have the tools to re-regulate. And so then I'm just spiraling and now the day is over. Right. And so there is like, I guess I'm just going to doom scroll for the rest of my day and nothing else will get done. So being able to trust myself that I can re-regulate is incredible. I will also say that a big piece of what it feels like for me now is walking through the world, interacting with humans without a cloud of rejection sensitivity hanging over my head. Not that I'm not rejection sensitive, I still am, but I've built up a lot of skills and tools and ability to re-regulate, which really is the key to everything. Just little like parenthetical statement here. If a person with ADHD can learn how to regulate their emotions, identify, feel, soothe, process their emotions, they're gonna be unstoppable. That's the number one thing. And so in terms of relationships, I used to really over-explain, kind of be a weirdo. I would be like so kind of like aggressively into the relationship or completely ghosting the relationship, like no in between. And now there's like a steadiness to it and it's regulated. It's a regulated response to relationships, even new, fun, exciting relationships. And so it's not necessarily how it looks from the outside, but how it feels from the inside, because all of us our lives are going to look different. Right. So like anybody with ADHD can do anything they want to do if they have the right tools and support and systems in place. But it starts with that support because, if somebody is unsupported, then ADHD is a real hindrance to whether or not they're able to perform at the level they want to. So I feel so lucky to have a job that I love. This is the 3rd company that I've started and it feels like home, but I literally had a crash out last week to my husband that I was like, I'm going to go work at McDonald's. I'm done. So like, it's the same as everybody else. I mean, I don't know if you ever think that, but I'm like, I do not like, it's hard. It's just like hard to be a person. It's hard to have a job. It's hard to like show up for your people every single day. So I was just like, maybe I could flip hamburgers.
Yeah.
Like maybe I could do that.
Humaning is hard work. It is hard work.
So hard. But again, the difference is my husband and I have been married for 21 years. So we've had a lot of time to like build our marriage. And he just supported me through the crash out. Then the next day I was supposed to drive to Philly to record my podcast. I was like, I don't want to do it. And he's like, I'm going to drive you and I'm going to be your buddy and I'm going to take care of lunch. So like to be able to have that person that you can lean on, even in our marriage 15 years ago, I didn't know how to lean on him. Right. So that was like a skill I had to develop. He didn't know how to emotionally support me. So like this is why it's like, this is the work of our lives. Like these types of things just take so much time to develop. But to be a high functioning ADHDer, I can't believe it. I can't believe I get to call myself that because I was literally laying on my couch watching daytime TV for hours, making like $30 a day doing piano lessons, which is fine, but not fine when you don't have any money and you need to like help support your family, right?
Yeah.
So the difference, the stark contrast is absolutely huge. But I will say the way that I feel is the biggest difference. The way that I get to exist in my own brain and soul and body is so, so different.
Yeah. And I'm sure what a gift for him too, to understand how to support you and to be there
Girl,
for
that
you.
took years.
Sometimes that's what happens.
I have a couple episodes on my podcast of us just talking about that process, because a lot of people ask me like, oh, Greg seems so supportive. He's the best. And I'm like, I mean, yeah, he's great. But like it took us years to get to that point, right? For me to be able to even be able to name what I needed and wanted. For him to even accept that ADHD is a hindrance and a thing, he approached it just like everybody else says, which is like, what's the big deal? What's the big deal? What is the big deal? Right. And so that took quite a while. And now, yes, we've done that work and we're in a place where I can have a crash out and say, I'm going to go work at McDonald's. And he could say, how about I drive you to Philly tomorrow? And I'm like, okay, great.
I love that. I love that. That's so great. All right. So give us, if someone on the line is listening and they are like, wow, I've listened to this and I'm self-diagnosing right now. I know I have ADHD, and they're saying that to themselves. They're probably going to start by listening to some of your podcast and get to know you and your style. But what is an actionable thing they can do outside of, I mean, you gave us one already, which is rebuilding your vision of yourself, creating a trust closet instead of, one that's a shame closet. But like, what's one more action they can take that is going to put them in, like, help them start moving in the right direction so they can start feeling better?
Yes. I think the most important thing is to familiarize yourself with ADHD and the symptoms. Because again, that goes back to what is just me and my own character and what is ADHD. And I think that is really important, to be able to recognize when ADHD is showing up in your life. Because again, if you don't have a context, if it's not ADHD's fault, then it's your fault, right? Because whose fault's it going to be? Right. So we need to kind of recognize, okay, what is it ADHD? Is that what's showing up in my life? And if so, like, how is that? And so where are you seeing the kind of the flavor of ADHD in your life? So I would just really start with like a symptoms list. Like what are the symptoms? Where do I see it in my life? I always encourage people to be diagnosed, even if they don't think that they're going to treat it, because I do think that there is a level of validation and acceptance that comes when, somebody with letters next to their name says like, yes, you have ADHD. I think that's very, very, very helpful. And so, yeah, that's probably where I would start, would be some education. There's some great books. My favorite book right now is Tamara Rozier's book, Your Brain's Not Broken. It's a really good kind of like introduction to ADHD. I have a symptoms list on my website. I have ADHD.com if anybody wants to head there and grab that. And if you do want to, kind of take the next step and seek a diagnosis, I highly recommend going with a symptoms list in hand and having things circled, like this is what I relate to. Because if you do have ADHD, when you sit down with a clinician and they say, so tell me, why do you think you have it? You're going to blank. Nothing will come. You're going to be like, I'm not sure. Why am I here?
Right.
And so kind of writing down notes, like here's where I see it in my life. Here's how I saw it as a kid, maybe chatting with your parents if you have a relationship with them about whether or not they see it, like that kind of thing. The education, I think, is so, so, so important.
That's great. That's great. I love that. And I love that you have so many great resources, Kristen. Thank you for that. Okay. Yeah. One last question, because I feel like this one is another really juicy one. If you're someone who is also realizing, oh my gosh, yes, it's probably ADHD. Let me go get my diagnosis. And in the meantime, you can look back and see that it's left some of your relationships in shambles. Is there and I'm curious, just even in your own experience, like, did you did you experience that? And if so, was there a repair? Is there a way you show back up to your friends and go, hey guys, I need to apologize. I just found out. And, like, what does that look like?
Oh, I love this question so much because I am currently editing my book on relationships and ADHD. And I am just like, this is a passion. Like the ADHD special interest, relationships are it, because we all want to be connected. And our ADHD symptoms will often lead to disruptions in connection. And then we're just like, I don't know what to do. And so a lot of times we'll just like pretend it didn't happen, or we will run and hide and ghost the relationship. It's just like very difficult. So I definitely think with the relationships that you care about the most, you do say something like, hey, I've been doing some research and learning a lot about myself. And I think that I probably have ADHD. And I'm realizing that I've probably messed up in our relationship this way and this way and this way. I see a pattern in myself. So for example, if I'm your friend that you've kind of labeled as like the hot mess friend, group text, hey guys, want to let you know, I'm pretty sure I have ADHD. Don't have a diagnosis yet, but I'm pretty sure. I've been reflecting about how I've interacted with this group, and I think that I've probably come across pretty flaky. And I just want to own that. I want to own that. I want you to know that it's something that I know we've kind of like laughed off, but I actually think it's probably related to my ADHD, and I'm not excusing it, but I'm just kind of giving you a context for how I'm thinking through it. It's something I really want to work on. It's not going to be perfect, but I want you to know I'm learning about ADHD. I'm going to go for a diagnosis. I may choose to be treated. And I really want to work on showing up in a more grounded way in these friendships, because you guys really matter to me. And I just want you to know that. So I hope that you can have some compassion for me, but also I want you to know that I see where I have messed up, and I'm sorry about that. So a conversation like that, going to a partner and being like, hey, I love you. I'm realizing some things about myself that are kind of hard to see. I want you to know that I think that my time management, my working memory, like some of these aspects of ADHD are really impacting our relationship. And I want to take ownership of that. I see how that's impacted you. And also, I'm going to work on that, and I'm going to try to make improvements. But I want to give you a chance to tell me, like, how has that impacted you? Has that been hard for you? So like giving the other, now that takes a ton of emotional regulation, but if you have the capacity for that, to invite like, hey, has that been hard for you? You can tell me about it if it has. Let's talk about it. I want, this is going to be an ongoing repair process. I know it's not going to happen right away, but I want you to know that I'm going to be working on my part, on my like contribution here. I think those conversations are so impactful. And you know, the people that I've repaired with the most are my kids, because when they were little, my ADHD was untreated. And, you know, because at the time, the medical recommendations were like, don't take any medication if you are pregnant or nursing. And then you just kind of are like, well, I've done it for 5 years without it. So I don't know. Do I even need ADHD medication? Yes. For me personally, yes, you do. So the people that I've repaired the most with are my kids, and letting them tell me the ways that I hurt them. Gosh, it's the hardest thing as a mom.
I bet.
Hey, when you used to yell at us, that really, I hated that, Mom. And me being able to say, I'm so sorry. How did that feel for you? Tell me more. What was that like? I'm really, really sorry. And I, once in a while, will say to them, like, I want you to know that my ADHD was untreated. It's not an excuse, but I do want to give you context for like why it was so hard for me to parent 3 little boys at one time. But really, my kids don't care. They don't need to know, right? It's just like their mom hurt them. They need an apology.
That's
So
right.
for the most part with my kids, I don't make any explanation for it. I just take ownership and I say like, I'm so sorry. And also I'll never get tired of saying sorry. I say that to them all the time.
Oh,
and I'm never going to get tired of that. So just keep coming to me with this stuff. I want to talk about it.
So good. So good. Kristen, this has been great. Such a great conversation around this. And I really feel like this is going to help some folks out there who are wondering why they may be behaving and thinking about themselves as they do. And perhaps it'll give them a path to freedom here. Tell us how we can get in touch with you, Kristen. How do people reach out to you? How do they get more of your content?
Well, I host the I Have ADHD podcast. It's a very easy and free way to engage. You already love podcasts. So when you're done with Mary D's, come over and hang out with me too. And then also my website, IHaveADHD.com. I have resources on there, and I also have a coaching program if you're interested in doing a deep dive into ADHD. It's called Focused. So you can find all of that on my website.
Amazing. All right. If you want to get in touch with our guest today, just check out the show notes or pop down in the comment section and you are going to see a way to get all of those goods, especially if you're driving and listening to this episode right now. And as we wrap up today, I just want to take a second out and if this conversation has stirred something in you, then I hope you'll hear this clearly. If you have ADHD or you think you do, or if you love someone who does, just know like there's nothing wrong. You're not broken. You're not lazy. You're not going to be behind. You're just, so many of us have learned very early to mistrust ourselves or to override our instincts or to push harder when our nervous system was already overwhelmed. And over time, that creates this kind of quiet erosion of self-trust that most people don't talk about, that we did talk about today. And what I really loved so much about this conversation with Kristen is the reminder that healing, it comes from befriending yourself and understanding how your brain works, honoring your own emotional rhythms, and choosing to have compassion for yourself over that shame over and over again. And this is where the joy comes in, y'all. It's something that you don't necessarily earn, but you get to have it when you stop fighting your nature and instead you rebuild a life that supports you, a life that you look at and go, okay, I can trust again. Self-trust that creates safety, and that safety creates regulation. And from regulation, joy becomes available again. And I think Kristen's such a great example of that. So, be good to yourself. Be kind to yourself. Be okay with a soft reset. You don't need to be more disciplined. You don't need a better day planner. You just need permission to trust yourself again and see all the possibilities for yourself. So until next time, may abundance always walk beside you. May joy always go before you. And may love always light and guide you on your path. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today on the MADLOVE Your Life Show. If this episode supported you, inspired you, or gave you even one aha moment, I would love for you to subscribe, to share it with someone you care about, or leave a review, because that's how this message gets into more hearts and more homes. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. For full video episodes, extended conversations, and bonus content, head over to the MADLOVE Your Life Show on YouTube. For upcoming events, updates, collaborations, and sponsorship opportunities, visit maryd.com. And remember, your life is worthy of your love, your presence, and your joy. So until next time, keep making a difference in love by choosing MADLOVE.